Welcome
to the joy of coding.
Hello, and welcome to episode 272 of The Joy of Coding. My name is Mike Conley. We're going to be looking at some Firefox stuff today, maybe trying to investigate some issues, answering some questions for people on Bugzilla. It's going to be a great time. I'm so happy you're here. Let's get started. Let me just share my screen. Whoops, wrong screen. Here it is. Yeah, it's December 1st. Happy December 1st, everybody. It's December 1st, 2021. Last month of the 2021s. Yeah, almost through. It's been over a year now of streaming from home. That's wild. When was the last time I streamed from the Toronto, the Mozilla office? Let's see if we can find the first episode where I mentioned that I was streaming from home. Pandemic Edition. November 18th, 2020. Pandemic Edition, July 1st, 2020. I was talking about Matrix, 5-year anniversary. And then, there was a big jump from February 26th to March 18th where I'm like, hey, I guess I'm streaming from home. So March 18th, 2020 was the first episode 208, where I was streaming from home. We're coming in, if we get to 308 episodes here, of over almost 100 episodes. I mean, let's do the math here. 272 minus 208. I can't do that in my head because I'm not very good at math. But 64. Yeah, just shy of 65, if we want to round that up to a multiple of 5. Just under 65 episodes recorded here at home, and hopefully we'll be back in the office soon. Okay, what are we doing today? Well, the first thing I want to mention for the folks who maybe have never seen the stream before, just so you're aware, no plan survives breakfast. I think I know what I want to do today. I think I know what I want to look at and what I want to sort of poke at, but who knows what'll happen? You know, none of the stuff I'm doing today I've really pre-rehearsed or pre-examined. I haven't gotten pre-written solutions for anything, so it might be a bumpy ride. You know, we might be discovering stuff as we go. We might get blocked, sidelined. We might discover some stuff. We might get, we might get nowhere. Who knows? But we'll do it together. That's the first thing. The second thing is that this agenda that we're looking at is something that you have access to. If you're watching this on Air Mozilla, check out the, oh, wow. That's interesting. Do I have an ad blocker? I must have tracking protection enabled. My bad. Oh, I guess it's going to do a countdown. If you are watching this on Air Mozilla, check out the video. Watching this on YouTube, it's in the video description. And if you're watching this on Twitch, let me just drop it into the Twitch chat. Whoops, I copied the wrong link. It's this one, 272. Whoop, right here. Agenda. There you go. So you can follow along. So what are we doing today? Well, I have some neat infos that I didn't get to last week, and I don't think I've been able to get to since then, so I figured we should get to them now. It's not a great idea to have these sorts of things lingering for so long, so let's see if we can get to them now. So the first one is bug 1575379. This is a neat info from Barrett. I actually filed this bug 2 years ago, and it was about a meta bug to make it possible to capture non-warm startup times using frame recording. This was an idea that we'd had to make it easier for us to measure startup performance. And I think let me just check to see if this is a public document. No, it is not a public document. But basically, I had written up a description of how the testing procedure would work. And basically, you have two machines. You have the testing device and the recording device. And the recording device, they like communicate with one another. And the recording device uses like an HDMI capture card. And what we do is we send instructions to the testing device to restart itself, launch Firefox, and we use the HDMI capture card to record video of that, and we process the video frames. So it was just sort of that's not like a really novel testing idea or testing strategy. We've got similar things with browser browser performance for web page, like loading web pages. We call that our browser time tests, and those were actually pioneered, I think, from folks at, I think it might be Wikipedia. Let me see, Wikipedia browser time. Is that what? Yeah, site speed IO browser time. Are these Wikipedia people? Browser time. Collect performance metrics. Handles everything. Records a video and then calculates visual metrics using the video. Who worked on this? I'm pretty sure. Site speed IO. Who is this? I thought that there was a relationship between this group and Wikipedia, but I could be wrong. Sitespeed.io. Who are these people? What's it cost? Contribute. Who are these people? About us. Okay. So, I work in the performance team on Wikimedia. That's right. One of the team members works at Wikimedia. That's the relationship there. Okay. Anyways, so I'd written that whole thing up. Hello, SureShack55. And, you know, the browser time site speed stuff is good for instrumenting, you know, web pages, but it's not so good for launching an executable on an operating system like Windows and recording when the actual browser executable is ready. We were able to adapt some of the mechanisms for that and capture similar visual metrics, but it required some pretty heroic efforts from Barrett to write a harness that allows us to like launch the browser, restart a machine, wait for the machine to be in a steady state. These are not in the correct order. And then capture the video and then record the visual metrics using that video. And so Barrett's question here is, unless I'm mistaken, I think this work is already done, but was landed for FX record. I think the dependencies for this bug are backwards. And yeah, I agree. This is done. This is now fixed. So it shouldn't, I shouldn't have waited so long, but the dependencies, maybe we should, what was this? Write a frame recording to capture. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to dupe this. Make it possible. Depends on this. Very cold start scenarios. What was the original bug title? Make it possible to capture startup times using frame recording. Well, that is done, and that is dependent on this, which is task for running the startup desk recorder, hardware harness, worker pool. It blocks doing this. And I think, yeah, this actually, it's the other way around. I think Barrett's right. Like, the relationship is different. So, it doesn't actually depend on this. It blocks this. Correct. All right. Okay, so that's one neat info. That was easy. Next one was the search box moves left and right every time you type. Every you type. So set. Oh, this might require a Windows machine. Open preferences. Type something. Example SEC. Oh, there's a screencast. Let's watch the screencast together and see if we can see what Alice is talking about. Oh, that's interesting. Let's do that again. I guess by hiding and showing things, we're changing the width. Oof. All right. This appears to be private rather than listed. Should be viewable. Yeah, at its heart, the issues involved are the position of the search box depends on the width of the content area containing the prefs. The search box contents control which of the items in that area are visible. Some of those items are wider than others and have content or text that either never wraps or isn't correctly set up to wrap. We use pixel width for the width of the content area, and that pixel width is not enforced. So in general, I see this happening with the network settings. All this content is forced to be horizontally adjacent. Learn more link can't wrap, and as a result, this ends up with significant minimum width. I just spilled Coke all over myself. Great. I just stained my shirt. I'm wearing a white shirt. Should have realized this can's fuller than I thought. I will have to get that out later. Using bleach. So, it's worst. Yeah, this will be dependent on the strings being used in so different locales. Mitigations. Stop having the alignment of the search box using calc this and resolve that width to a fixed value immediately after page load. The downside is it might not align with the content if the search for content ends up wider. Upsides should be fairly straightforward. Enforce the content pane width is fixed. Even if some elements are wider, yeah, that does feel like rather fragile. Fix elements that don't wrap correctly so they do wrap correctly, or use EM to set the width of the content pane such that it adjusts to a higher Windows text size. 3 and 4 are the most attractive as the right solution for what's happening here. Fix items that don't wrap correctly. And 3 would solve some other issues if done right. Here's a checkbox label, learn more, that behaves correctly component. And especially 3 would also probably demand some significant investment. 1 is appealing because the quick fix doesn't contaminate other code and would fix the jittering, but doesn't address some of the longer term tech debt here. What do I think we should do? Now there's some discussion about Pepsi Crystal or Sprite, maybe. That maybe would have been better. It wouldn't have stained. It would have just been a sugary mess. So what is the right solution here? Well, I mean, it's immediately bad. Like it's just a bad experience right now, and especially because the search box is one of the first things that you see on the page, and it's so inviting. It's probably a tool that people use. And at least in this particular case, like the experience is pretty rough with it moving around. So I actually think, here are my thoughts. Let me write down my thoughts. I think we should start with 1 and file a separate bug to do 3 and perhaps make that a mentored issue. I'm only advocating for 1 because it's an immediately bad experience. It's not immediately, but like a pretty bad experience for a piece of UI that's exposed really early on. Exposed right at the top, rather. Right at the top of About Preferences. If we can wallpaper this over now and get a bug on file to pay down that tech debt, maybe we'll get a shot. Someday get a shot to either pay it down or mentor someone to help us pay it down. Okay, that's my thought. All right. Next up, Pip Twitter video stops when original video is scrolled out of view. Yeah, that's true. That is true. So the reason for this, so for example, navigate to this tweet. Hopefully this is safe for work. Sure. Some kind of president. Pop out the video. Okay, so I'm gonna mute this. Joe Biden on the View. I'm going to mute this, but I'm going to pop out the video. And then what's the next step? Scroll down past video in the timeline. Okay, so I'm going to scroll down past the video, and the video pauses. Right. The video pauses when the original video scrolled out of view, and there was some discussion about this. Chrome also has the same issue. That is true. Any any picture-in-picture implementation that I'm aware of is going to have that same issue. The reason for it is because I believe Twitter is using the intersection observer to notice whenever a video is out of frame, and then it is pausing the video as a optimization, I guess. So presumably this is happening because Twitter is pausing the original video, and fixing this would require either overriding the decision from the website to pause the video, or cloning the video into our own element, transferring picture-in-picture to that video and continuing to play it in that clone, but doing that without any interruption to the video, and that does sound difficult. We'd also have to make sure that if an explicit user interaction triggered the pause, we'd still honor that pause. I actually think it depends. Scroll a little bit and a pause. Scroll a bit further and eventually the player closes, probably because the video element was removed from the DOM. There might be something clever we could do where if something attempts to remove the video from the DOM while it's being closed visually, we put it into some kind of special domain where it still exists in memory but isn't in the page anymore. But I suspect this might break expectations for a site that reintroduces a video back into the DOM afterwards, as it would probably expect the video to have to be fully unbound. The pause thing also sounds like it'd be brittle. I don't have a great solution to this. And then one of our product managers recently commented, out of sight, out of mind, this is very unpleasant, but it sounds like there's no reasonable workaround for it. Chrome, Opera, and Vivaldi disable their pip and feeds, which seems somewhat extreme to me. However, on Twitter, there's a way to recover from this behavior. Stop scrolling if pip window is still visible. Press play and the video continues. Is that true? Let's find out. So this, scroll, pauses, hit play, and it continues. Makes sense. Makes sense. Because, yeah, the Twitter is just pausing the video. Wait. Right. However, on Twitter, there's a way to recover. Yeah, a user can then reopen the feed. In Facebook, the experience is much more disruptive. So here's, okay, I don't have a Facebook account, so I can't actually follow this. But log in with a Facebook account, launch picture-in-picture to some video, continue scrolling. The pip video pauses. It does not disappear with further scrolling. If you stop scrolling and press play, the video plays for a fraction of a second and then pauses again. I feel like the expected result here would be video continues playing until the source is scrolled out of view. Continue launch pip video pauses. It does not disappear with further scrolling. Video continues playing until the source is scrolled out of view. We previously discussed this a bit. I'm not sure if anything has changed or if the work to keep the video alive if the tab is closed would help with some of this. Pausing could be fixable, though, as Mike says, brittle, but removing it is the harder bit to fix. Okay, so let's see. What are ideas here? Hang on, let me... let's not listen to this video. Okay, so there is a video here. Let me get at the video. Where is the video? Let me get at the video. Query selector video. Are you there? No? Come on. How about in there? There you are. Plays inline. Disable picture-in-picture. So that, yeah, Twitter is actually choosing to disable picture-in-picture, which we are not paying attention to because we don't implement the spec purposely. And let's see here. I'll respond. This is actually... these browsers aren't allowing for pip because Twitter has put disable picture-in-picture equals true on the video. We intentionally do not support that or any part of the picture-in-picture web API specification. See, there was a disable picture-in-picture. Yeah, this bug. For more context. Let's see. So what could we do instead? Well, we have this video here. Reveal it in the inspector. What do we have for events? It looks like they're monitoring it for picture-in-picture events anyways, which is really interesting. I'll bet you there's an intersection observer. Let's see. Is it playing if you have... so SmurfD asks, is it playing if you have it in the feed and scroll below it? If you have it in the feed and scroll below it. Yes, it will pause the video. Yeah. Like the site will pause the video. So if I scroll down here and scroll back, it's paused it. Let me think here what we could do. So a few thoughts. I honestly can't think of a great way to solve this unless we fully detach the video stream from the video element. Yeah, it's basically what Heis is saying. Like, cloning the video in our own element, transferring pip to that video, and continuing to play it in that clone, but doing that without any interruption to the video. And then if the user like touches these controls while in that state, we'd still have to like honor them. We'd have to know that the user is attempting to manipulate this video despite having like pulled it out into our own like video element under the hood. It's a tricky problem. Yeah. Smirty says, I do think users should have more control over Twitter. Yeah, it's a matter of trying to figure out how to grant that control without breaking the web. Let me think here. Let me think. So my original thought was like, well, maybe we disqualify the video from intersection observer. Here's an idea. What if when a video is in picture-in-picture, we override the play and pause methods on the video so that we only we don't respond to them programmatically. We only respond to them like unless the user has we're responding to a user input event. I wonder how easy it would be to prototype that. Let me see what I've got. Do I have a debug build? What do I have for a build locally? So I don't think I've got an opt build lying around. At least not a recent one, but maybe we can mess with video controls a little bit. Video controls is basically it's our binding, our user agent binding to the video elements. And what Twitter is using is actually called the no controls widget. which doesn't show much, but it can still show error messages and whatnot. And I wonder if there's a way for us to hook. What controls do we have over HTML video elements? So this is what we're looking at here is called a WebIDL file. It describes the user interface of a video element. And some of these things are like what we call Chrome only, meaning privileged code only. Or only function whenever a certain pref is flipped or something. Like this one, which is used to actually do the picture-in-picture stuff. Okay. How about the media element? Because I know that video implements this as well. Is also a media element. Paused. So something can call play and something can call pause, and those things can like pausing can throw. So here's what we could do. Pause. An HTML media element. I do think users, maybe Twitter shouldn't even know if the video is in pip mode or that violates spec. Twitter doesn't know. Twitter does not know, in Firefox at least. In the other browsers, it prevents, like, so I want to be very clear here. Firefox does not implement the picture-in-picture specification that Google has put together for the WCG. It does not implement any part of it. And so, you know, that disable picture-in-picture attribute doesn't affect Firefox. Picture-in-picture in Firefox is a browser feature. There's a distinct difference. And the other thing is that sites don't know whenever we're using Firefox's picture-in-picture. We don't tell them, we don't fire an event for them, we don't call any callbacks. It is like, it's the same thing that they don't know whenever you open up your URL bar, because it's a browser feature. It's not a web feature. It's a browser feature we developed. And so they don't know if users if users are using pip mode, except in the other browsers. So in Chrome-based browsers, so Chrome-based browsers and WebKit, a callback is fired whenever you attempt to enter picture-in-picture, and I think you know, that allows the site to do various things. It could, for example, pause the video. So I wonder if what we could do here is in pause internal, check to see if we're a video element that's cloning. And if so, only pause if there is a user input handler on the stack. Because we know when that's the case. There are a couple places where we do that. It's a bit of a hack, but we could try it. But in order to try it, we're going to actually have to wait until this build is done. So that might take a little while. I don't actually know. Let me actually see what my SC cache looks like. Where are we at? Oh, we're getting some cache hits, so it might not take too long. It might only be a couple minutes. I'm getting some cache hits. That's good. So this might not be too bad. So let's come back to this. And in the meantime, we'll look at some of these intermittent test failures that I also thought we might look at today. So in bug 1634804, browser restart required Title element exists. Null equals true. It looks like I had worked on this at least a little bit. There's some activity in here for me. So 2 years ago, this got filed. And I was like, someone landed a patch to disable it. And then I posted a patch to fix it. And then I pushed a patch that I thought fixed it. And then the failures kept coming. It did not fix it. Did not actually fix it. And so they're going to disable it again. And when did I get need info'd? Right here. Should we disable this? Now, is it the same test failure as before? Let's look at the first. Title element exists. Null equals true. And what was my original... The original complaint here was... The title element exists. Okay, so my original solution, I guess, didn't do the job. Here's the patch I posted. We can take a look at that. Shurshik asks, does SC cache work for C++ and C? It does. It does. Yes, it does. There's no guarantee that the about restart required page has finished loading it after the crash. If that's the case, wait for it. We wait for DOM content loaded since error pages don't fire load events. If doc ready state is loading, what are the other ready states it might be in? Can't remember. Ready state change. Yeah, ready state. That's what I want. Ready state. Oh, no, that's the media element. Ready state. Document ready state. It can be loading, interactive, or complete. So when it hits interactive, the DOM content loaded should fire. Before DOM content loaded. So it seems like it fires just before DOM content loaded as an alternative. Add interactive. As an alternative to the load event. And it sounds like they'd fire before those things. Sub-resources are still loading. And the restart required page is we're getting null for the title. What is the restart required page? Let's take a look at it. Restart required. Oh, you know what it might be? Fluent. So Fluent does asynchronous translation of things. And this got converted to Fluent back in 2018. And I'll bet you, even when DOM content loaded is true, it's not necessarily the case. Like, after it fires, it's not necessarily the case that the translation will have occurred yet. There's a way we can actually wait for that. Hang on. So let me... Have they landed this? Did they land this? Needs revision. I actually think I have another idea of how to fix this test and make it less flaky. I'll post a patch in the bug momentarily. Momentarily. So let me see if I can create a patch. Now this is tricky because I've already got a build going here, an opt build. So how can we do this work when we already have a build going? Well, the good news is that I think this sort of thing I can do with an artifact build. And my artifact build will use a different objector, an objector. So if you've ever worked on Firefox before, you'll know that one of the things that gets created when you use mock build is an object directory, and that's where all the build artifacts go. Things like generated files, any generated C++, but also the object files, the headers, everything that gets pre-processed goes through a bunch of scripting and gets dumped into this, what we call the object directory. And you can see what one looks like here. So it's like there's a bunch of stuff gets created, and we're not there yet. Whenever you've created this object directory and you've populated it with all the pre-processed stuff, then there's the build step. So then all the stuff in here gets run through the compiler. So that's your C++, Rust, Objective-C compiler, and then it gets linked up. So what you have in this directory is usually you don't have the C++ in here, I don't think. By the time it reaches the objector, you've compiled. I should clarify. The stuff in the objector isn't C++. It's sometimes there are header files like this, pre-processed header. Hang on. That's not true. There are definitely header files in here. Find name. See, like dist include. There are definitely headers in here. Are there any? Surely there are some C++. Yeah, there are C++ files in here, but they've gone through pre-processing. Okay, so after everything gets pre-processed, and some of them get unified, like a bunch of C++ files get sewn together into a single C++ file sometimes, and they get thrown into the objector, and then we send them through the compilers, and they get linked up, and finally what gets produced goes in this subdirectory called dist, and in that, under bin, that's when your binary things get created, like under binary dist bin, I think. Where's Firefox, for example? Well, on Mac OS, you're not going to find it in. I think the problem is that I'm building this directory right now. Let's find an old one. 19.5. This is a really old one. Dist bin. Yeah, this is the stuff you're going to see inside dist bin, and that'll include your Firefox binary. Now, why do I bring this up? I bring this up because by using an artifact build, I'm using a different objector. And that means that so long as I don't change things too much, I shouldn't end up screwing up anything that's happening in this build step for my normal kind of build. So, this has all the environment variables to do my optimized non-artifact full binary build right now. And over here, I'm going to say build with artifact. And all that does is set some environment variables in this shell. And then if I do mock build, I'm going to do an artifact build over here, and that's not going to affect this build because this is using a different object directory. So that it's using one called obj-artifact. That's the way I set it up. And they shouldn't interfere with one another. So the only way I could potentially interfere with this build is if I like modified some code and then hit save before this thing had built it, before it had packaged it or built it. And that'll be true for things like JavaScript. But for the purposes of the thing that we're looking at for this bug, this intermittent test failure, that shouldn't matter. That shouldn't matter. So hopefully that made sense. Hey, magically, the stain has kind of gone away. I can kind of see it. It's just faded a little bit. Luckily, it's zero sugar Coca-Cola, so it's not like a sticky mess. It's just a small stain on my shirt. All right, let's keep going. Now, the one problem with doing these builds at the same time is obviously I'm doing a lot on my laptop right now. I've got OBS running. I'm recording this because that's how I operate with OBS. I stream and I record at the same time for backing it up. And then I've got a full-blown binary build going on here, and I'm requesting an opt build, which requires it to do like a bunch of Python in order to figure out what to get. And so I'm probably saturating all my cores. If I look at like the activity monitor, I'll bet you we're going to see that all of my CPUs are like maxed out. CPU load. Let's take a look. 16 cores. Boom! Look at all that. Maximum. So my machine's going to be a little rough for the next little bit while I get this build going. But in the meantime, maybe I can talk a little bit about the holiday stream. So on December 15th, I had talked about maybe doing a special holiday stream. That's not next week, but the week after. That'll be the last stream of the year. And my special holiday stream, I put out some ideas. I think my first idea was like, hey, maybe I can play a game that I wrote back when I was first learning how to program. And the other one was maybe we could watch Code Rush. I actually think there'll be time to do both. So I'm thinking next on December 15th, this is not next stream, but the stream after, I'll watch Code Rush with you. We can watch together, get some popcorn ready. I'll have some popcorn be munching on. We'll watch Code Rush together. I'll pause it periodically like an annoying co-viewer of a movie. I'll pause it and I'll talk your ear off about things I'm seeing and my impressions. I've seen it before. It's not like my first time seeing it. But if maybe you haven't seen it and this is your excuse to see it, and maybe I can supply additional context. And I know there's at certain points where you can like see source code flying by the screen, and we can pause it and we can look at it and see what they're looking at. So we can do that. And then the game I made when I was younger is not a very complicated game, so we can play it together. And we can do both. That'll be the holiday stream. Maybe we can even look at the source code, although it is a mess. Okay, so our artifact build is done. What I want to do is I want to run this test. This test is, what was it? Tab crashed, browser shown, restart required. Let's say mock, Moki test, browser shown, restart required. CPUs. Woo! Okay. I think we are all now aware of how busy my machine is. But that's okay. Sometimes doing multiple things is fine. Okay, so the test passes. What I want to do is modify the test. Whenever we're waiting for it to load, I mean, there's this step, but it's also wait for any fluent strings to have been inserted. Oh, wait. Hold on. Oh, yikes. I'm wrong. So I thought I knew what was going on here. But I'm wrong, because it's not actually looking at the strings, it's just looking for the presence of the elements. Ugh. And I already told these people that the people in this bug that I knew what was going on. Yikes, I better deliver now. Okay, let's see. Well, let's investigate this a little bit further. Let's take a look at a screenshot of the failure. That's something we can do. So if we look at a recent failure, we can open it up here in Treeherder. Or this is reports of the failures, and we can find a recent one. There's one from yesterday in Autoland on Linux debug. Can we pull up the job? And one of the things that gets created is a PNG, a screenshot of the failure. And it looks like nothing got created. How does this test work? Crash frame assert is at restart required page. Is there a case where this runs and we actually see the page? No. Let's go a bit further here. An opt build. No. Never showed up. At least at the time of failure. Well, one way we could verify that is we should wait for the document ready state is loading. We should wait for DOM content loaded, because maybe this is the initial about blank before a document actually loads. That can occur. And we have tools for that. Hang on, browser test utils, DOM content loaded. Waits for an ongoing page load. Wait for browser loaded. Wait, browser test utils, browser loaded. And then you can tell it what browser you, what things you care about. Like, it might be an error page, and that's true. So false, null, true. Or though maybe we want about restart required. So false, about restart required, true. Doc ready state. How about isn't? Yeah, equals loading. Let's see what happens when we run this. Hello, DigitalOcean TV. That sounds really official. DigitalOcean is like some kind of important internet tool or something, I think. I don't know. But I've heard of DigitalOcean before. Sounds impressive. Hello, Godwo. Hey, everyone's saying hello. Hello, everyone. Now, did we actually enter this? That's the other thing, is because this is oh, you know what we should do? Assert crash frame. We go to a particular page, simulate a build ID mismatch. We crash the frame, and then do this. How do we make sure that we're actually entering here? Like, M. Conley entered here. Let's see if verify headless, and then let's see if that string ever shows up. It's a VPS provider. Oh, DigitalOcean. It's a VPS provider with good docs. Well, that is a glowing review, DigitalOcean TV. Good docs. Do I sponsor? Are they my sponsor? Do I sponsor them, or do they sponsor me? I don't know what's going on. Thanks for being my sponsor, DigitalOcean. Or you're welcome for sponsoring you, DigitalOcean. I don't know what our relationship is. It's probably something to do with Amazon and Twitch. So I actually don't see us entering that code path, probably because my machine, like, this is a race effectively, and we're not entering the race condition. But with the verify command, we can use chaos mode to sort of stress test the machine a little bit and see if we can recreate the conditions where we enter the losing race condition and make sure that our solution works properly. While we're waiting on this, any questions from the audience? There were no questions that came in through the rate this episode form. So any questions from the audience about what I'm doing, or what's going on here in the stream, or Firefox stuff, or anything like that. Technical. Oh, we entered it. Hey, we entered the. Interesting. Now I kind of wish it was open. So, browser test utils child has this like DOM content loaded handler. I do this sometimes where like if I'm dealing with this sort of thing, I'll say saw event a event dot type at a event dot target document URI slash a event dot target dot location. I'll do it after I send the message. All right, let's do it again. Let's do it again. And that happened while we were doing the chaos mode stuff, so we can actually jump ahead to that part and just use chaos mode directly. You do it with an environment variable. If you've never used chaos mode when you're testing, it's great because what it does is it tells the Gecko, the Firefox code base, to basically randomly prioritize threads, randomly change the ordering of various unordered collections. Lots of things to help sort of stress test things and find intermittent test failures in races. Change the conditions so that certain races will reveal themselves rather. So, wow, there are some questions. I don't know much about you. This is my first time watching you, says Godwo. Well, thanks for watching. I don't know much about you either, so I guess we're even. SureShack55 asks, are you planning to do Advent of Code? You know, I did last year, and I did the year before that, and every time I do Advent of Code, I do it over the holidays with the intent or the hope of using it as a... We entered the race. So it starts with about restart required. It isn't about restart required, but it starts with. So maybe that's what I'll change this to being, because I think it can be a function as well as a want load, a function. So I can be like, what does it take as its argument? If a string, if not present first, load resolves promise. Takes 0 and returns true if that's the load we're interested in. If it's a string, what is the function called with? The URL. Okay. URL that starts with about restart required. Okay. Let's see if that works. Okay, are you planning to do Advent of Code? Yes, I was. I try and do it every year as an opportunity and an excuse to learn more Rust. I bought a Rust book recently, and, you know, I have some ability to read Rust. I'm just not very confident with writing it, so Advent of Code gives me an excuse for writing it. The book that I bought as well has a bunch of, like, practical exercises for building a game, like a sort of a dungeon crawler roguelike text game. Saw event DOM content loaded about restart required. Yeah, that should have been enough. Well, come on now. Dump evaluating URL. That should be enough for you. Why isn't it enough for you? Will I do it this year? Probably. You know, this year I'll probably be a little busier. Pandemic providing, I'll be a little bit busier than last year during the holidays. Last year during the holidays, nothing. I did nothing. I didn't see family or anything. This year maybe I'll be able to see some family. So I guess it's dependent on that, whether I'll get some downtime to do sort of things like advent of code. Oh, interesting. Interesting. We get that kind of URL. Want load will be called with the visible URL. Okay. Yeah, all right, that's why. So want load, we don't want to use want load at all. So we're just going to set that to false. Or no, let's not set it to false. Let's set it to page. Yeah, that's what we want. That's what we want. So yeah, my long answer, it's dependent. It's dependent on that. Is there a new date for Fission rollout by default? Fission rollout by default, we should be nearly there. I haven't actually checked, but I believe we should be at nearly everybody on the release channel. Actually, I wonder if our telemetry tells us. No, not there. Like we could take a look at Fission. Are there Fission probes we could look at? I'm not actually working on Fission these days, so it doesn't look like there are probes on the measurement dashboard here. So I'm not actually monitoring the dashboards. I've just been sort of reporting what I've been hearing. The plan was to roll it out to 100% by the end of November. It's December 1st, so we should, if we're not there, we should be pretty close, because I know we were over 50% at one point. So there's a release of Firefox coming out next week. I'm actually curious to know if they've turned Fission on by default. Have they decided to do that? Fission default. Let's see if there's a bug filed about that. So it looks like our code is working, where we enter sometimes we enter our event handler and sometimes we don't, and it works. So I'm more confident than not that this is going to help fix things. Do we enable Fission Pref by default in Firefox 97? Firefox is currently version 96 on Nightly. 97 will get created, I think, the beginning of next week. So, yeah, I think the plan is it's on by default in the Nightly 97 cycle, but we will have used the rollout deployment mechanism to have enabled it by default for all users on the 94 on version 94, which is out in release right now, by the end of November, hopefully. I don't think we're there quite yet. We might be close to 100%, but we're not quite at 100%. By next week, 95 will be released, and then that should, maybe if there's any leftover lingering people who don't have Fission enabled, we'll have it on by default soon after. And then 95 and 96 are kind of an opportunity to, like, I guess, fill in the last couple of gaps if there are people that don't have it yet. And then 97, it's on by default for real. So the rollout plan is, it should, if you're on release, chances are you have a greater than 50% chance that you have Fission enabled. And that probability only increases over the next couple of weeks. So hopefully that answers your question. Okay, I'm going to turn this into a patch that I can post for this regression, this intermittent test failure. I'm going to get rid of our garbage dump statement here. And we can get rid of this dump statement here as well. And then if we look at our patch, that's the change. Right, so we're gonna, what was the name of this bug? bug 1634804. I can say bug such and such. Account for the possibility for the initial about blank load to make browser shown restart required more resilient. I'll ask Mika for review. And actually what I should do is put in a more verbose comment in the commit message so that Mika knows exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so I thought that this was going to be a faster build because I had SC cache going, but really this is not. We're at like minute 35 here. Not great. It might not be done by the time the stream is over. We shall see. We haven't been helping things by doing work, you know, with the artifact builds and stuff. We've been stealing cycles, but hey, we were able to get some other stuff done. Okay, so what I want to do actually is I want to augment this commit message a little bit further and say browser shown restart required works by crashing, especially crashing a content frame, crashing a tab, such that the resulting error page will be the about restart required error page. In an earlier patch in this bug, I tried to fix the intermittent test failure that was occurring because we weren't waiting for the about restart required page to finish loading before testing for the presence of certain DOM nodes. My solution was to use the DOM content loaded event handler, since load isn't fired for error pages like about restart required. The problem is that sometimes, depending on how quickly we're able to pull the markup for pages out of the omni.ja, the initial about blank will have an opportunity to fire its. The initial about blank for that gets loaded when creating a content viewer will have an opportunity to fire its DOM content loaded. And so the test will proceed despite the document not having the requisite nodes yet, causing the failure. This patch makes the test more resilient by using browser test utils. Those are loaded to wait for DOM content loaded and checking that the URL for the page matches our expectation, which is the original page's URL before the crash. Does that actually fix things? Because the about blank, we're waiting for DOM content loaded. Maybe error page. How does that work? Is wanted, maybe error page, then the visible URL is passed. I guess we do that intentionally. Doc ready state is loading. Wait for DOM content loaded for the page. Well, one way we can verify that this works is by pushing to try and doing a bunch of retriggers. All right. I have some more questions in the in the chat. I'll get to them in a quick second. So I'm just gonna. Oh, hang on. I have to rebase this onto central. Hopefully this doesn't cause my other build to get upset. It shouldn't. It shouldn't. It's changing central slightly, but not in a meaningful way because I know what this patch contains. It's just some changes to some markup. So we should be okay over here. The question is, what's my favorite dessert? I really like ice cream, and I like chocolate almonds. I like it when I don't have a nut allergy, so thankfully I like it whenever there are peanuts in a dessert. So like peanut butter ice cream is really good, and I know it's really rich, but if you can find like a New York cheesecake, that's really nice. There's a kind of cheesecake my mom used to make when I was younger. It's like a really light, almost like airy cheesecake, which I really enjoyed. Pro tip regarding peanut butter and ice cream: if you have any peanut butter in your cupboard and you don't have a nut allergy, because why would you have peanut butter if you had a nut allergy? And you've got some vanilla ice cream. What you can do is you can put out some scoops of vanilla ice cream in a bowl, then put a scoop of peanut butter from your jar into a little bowl and put it in the microwave for a couple seconds until it melts, and then pour it over your ice cream and it solidifies, and it's really tasty. Very rich, again, full of calories. Use it to bulk up if you need more calories. But it's very tasty. I really enjoy doing that. How did I start contributing to Firefox? I started by making add-ons. I made an add-on, made a couple of add-ons for Firefox, and then I was actually, before I started working on Firefox full-time, I worked on Thunderbird. I was hired as a contractor to work on Thunderbird, which is an email client written using the same technology as Firefox. And then I got, I was working for a subsidiary of Mozilla called Mozilla Messaging, which existed at the time to work on Thunderbird. And then Mozilla Messaging was reabsorbed into the Mozilla Corporation, and then I was retasked to work on Firefox instead of Thunderbird. So that's how I got started. Mozilla engineer? Question mark? Yes, I am a Mozilla engineer. Although in Canada, it's interesting. I hesitate to use the term software engineer. I tend to say software developer, and that's because in Canada, at least, the term engineer, like there's a rule. There are rules on what can actually be considered an engineer and what's not. And like you have to be there's a certification you have to pass from like the engineering cabal. Like I have a couple of friends who have engineering degrees, and they couldn't actually be called engineers until they got their certifications. Their PEng is what it's called up in Canada, PEng. And there's a lot of work that goes into that. And so I studied computer science. So I'm a computer scientist. I have a master's in computer science. I'm a software developer. Am I a software engineer? If I'm talking to Americans, I find that they don't care. And so, yeah, I'll say software engineer. But in Canada, at least, I find that I tend to be a little more careful because it makes people think that I've got like an engineering degree, and I don't. I don't have an engineering degree. I'm not a PEng. I don't have the ring. There's all these like special. This engineering has a special status, and I don't have that. Why isn't Mozilla going all in on WASM and giving it GC and full DOM access? Why would you want to give WASM GC? That's my response. Why would you want to give WASM GC? One of the problems, so the idea of WASM is to have like native performance characteristics running in a web runtime. And GC is a terrible property to add to that sort of set of conditions, because a GC will periodically interrupt things and scan the heap and reclaim memory, and that's bad for performance sometimes, especially if when you're using WASM, you're often trying to gain like native level performance. You're like doing 3D simulations, or you're making a computer game that's like doing heavy computations. You don't want the browser to run the GC, you know, arbitrarily, which will cause frame drop and stutter and a terrible user experience. So there's the idea of GCing is the trade-off there is that you end up making it so that your native code that you've worked so hard to port to WASM doesn't have the performance characteristics that WASM's supposed to give you. Now, that's not to say that you can't have your WASM code implement its own kind of garbage collection. Like, I know that, for example, you can run a virtual machine inside of a WASM, the WASM runtime. Someone certainly has compiled Python so that it can be run inside of WASM, the sandbox. Same with Lua, I think. And what that does is it allows you to like run script, but also to like manually call the garbage collector whenever convenient. And so it is possible to garbage collect in the scope of WASM, but you don't want the browser to do it. You don't want the JavaScript engine to do it arbitrarily. You probably want to control it yourself when you're native code. Full DOM access is a similar problem. DOM access, well, first of all, there's some advantage to giving DOM access. I mean, you can sort of have some DOM access. You have to write a glue layer in JavaScript. And I think part of that is because no matter what, you're going to want to have a translation layer. Your native code, for example, it was not probably designed to talk to the DOM. So having some kind of translation layer between the two, you're going to need that anyways. And so I think it's possible, for example, to have a WASM module, and then you have your translation layer, which knows how to touch the DOM when you need it to. I'm not an expert on this on the DOM part of this, but I can tell you for a fact that the garbage collector stuff is bad for performance, at least for the WASM stuff that you're probably compiling down to WASM. If you're looking for native or near native runtime performance with low jitter, low frame droppage, you don't want the GC kicking in because your WASM code is creating garbage. Yeah. So hopefully that answers your question. Danny Colin writes, you need to be a member of the Professional Order of Engineers. Is that what it's called? It sounds like a cabal. It sounds like a cult. But I think you're right. Like, I don't know if that's the exact name, but you have to be a member, an accredited member of the special group to have the title of engineer in Canada, at least. Godwoe goes, no spec, no implementation. I'm not sure what that means, but you put a smiley face on it, so I'm going to give you a smiley face too. Okay, so we rebased our thing here. What I want to do is I want to push it up to try and see if we can recreate the test failures. So the test failures were occurring on Linux predominantly. Linux debug builds. So let's see if we can spin some of those up. So what we can do is we can say mock try fuzzy. And then you can also pass it a directory that you want to run tests in. And in this case, I only want to run the tab crashed tests, and those are under browser-based content test tab crashed. So mock try fuzzy browser-based content tab crashed. Wait, content test tab crashed. And then we're going to say, oh, do an artifact build, please. And repeat, or rebuild rather, 9 times. And let's see what that gives us. Godwoe writes, I mean, Firefox is going to implement whatever is in the WASM spec. That's true, yeah. Especially for newer stuff like that. For older things, you know, before the browsers started working together, you know, the first version of the browser where you had Internet Explorer, Netscape Navigator, and, you know, everyone was just kind of making stuff up. There wasn't a lot of communication. These days, the browser vendors, Mozilla, Google, Microsoft, Apple, Opera, people from people who care about browsers, they get together and they collaborate on specifications. And when we agree on something as a group, that's when, that's how we work together to implement stuff and move the web forward. And that's why you don't, for example, necessarily need to have jQuery anymore. Like, I don't know if people here remember jQuery or Prototype. There were a bunch of like JavaScript libraries for glossing over web API differences, and you don't need those as much these days. Now, that's not to say that there aren't differences between the engines. That's very much the case. But you have to remember that like the engines are a lot more in line now in terms of API surface than they were back then. Like 15 years ago, it was a lot harder. You had to have a library like jQuery in order to write a JavaScript that worked cross browser engines. Like, or you just be like if-elsing all over the place based on, sniffing the user agent or whatever. Those libraries really helped make it so you could have a single code base and talk to all of the major browsers. And I think that's required less and less and less because the browser vendors are working together to spec things out. And that's not to say we always agree on stuff. I talked about the picture-in-picture web API earlier. That is a specification that came out of Google. And it hasn't been turned into a standard yet. It's a draft specification that they're working on, and it was based on stuff that Apple shipped without consulting anybody. At Mozilla, we have our, if you look at our opinions on various web specs, you can see that we deferred implementing the web API for picture-in-picture on purpose. We figured we could offer the same capability to users without actually introducing the web API, maybe even a superior capability to users, and did it using like just a browser feature. And that's what the Firefox picture-in-picture feature is. It's a browser feature. It's not an implementation of the web API. And the advantage of that is it really puts the power in the user's hands. Excuse me. We had identified before, for example, that Twitter has the disabled picture-in-picture attribute on videos in their feeds, and that means that Twitter makes it so that Chrome and Safari and all the other browsers, you can't easily picture-in-picture those items. Like, you could remove the attribute in DevTools. You could write a web extension to remove the attribute. Yes, you could do those things. But with Firefox, you don't have to. We don't pay attention to that attribute. We just let you control the video, and that's true for most videos. So, that's my little rant on. It's not really a rant. That's more my position on things like the browsers working together. Wow, this build's taking forever and pushing. You know what? I just want to get something done. So here's what I'm going to do. We're obviously not going to get to the Twitter thing because this build's not yet done. So I'm going to cancel this build to reclaim some CPU cycles. And instead, we're going to offer these CPU cycles. We're going to redirect them to mock try fuzzy so we can push this thing to try and I can end my stream. So hopefully the CPU is now... You can see the CPU load going down. That's good. And so this thing will start... hopefully to finish the job it started with the Python it was running, and eventually we're going to get a curses interface that allows me to select the jobs. A lot of waiting during the stream. I apologize. You know what I really should have done is made sure I had a binary build ready to go. I didn't expect us to be doing a binary build today or requiring a binary build, and I apologize. I only had a relatively recent artifact build, I think. Okay, here we go. So let's push this up to try. We're going to do Linux debug, Linux 1804 debug, Moki tests. And do we have fission enabled? I guess it doesn't matter. What were these jobs? Let's look at the details of these jobs again. It was with software web render, and fission was not enabled. But I really don't know if that's a requirement. This one had fission enabled. So let's just do it with fission enabled. Software web render. Go, 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 go. And we're going to try and reproduce this test failure in automation. And if we can reproduce it, then my solution doesn't work. And I've wasted everyone's time. because I restarted my machine, my private key is not registered, so or my identity with SSH agent is not registered. So just give me a second. I have to wait for I have to wait for Mock to give me my machine back. All right. Scooby-doop, doo-doo-doop-doop, ba-da-doop, doo-doo-doop-doop. There we go. And we just say Mock try again, because it remembers what I just tried to do. And once this goes up, I think I'm going to end the stream. So I apologize if you were hoping to see a little bit more inside the editor. I did a lot of talking. We didn't actually get to this part. I really apologize. I wish this build had been faster. Maybe someday we'll have really fast builds for opt builds. And normally you do, but I hadn't done an opt build in a while on this machine, so that was my fault. And with that, oh, you know what? Actually, we're pretty close. If we're doing toolkit library, it means we're pretty close to being done this build. Hey, how about, okay, we're gonna go a little long here. I want to see if that Twitter thing will work. That Twitter idea. So let's just give me a quick sec here. Yeah, we're done our compilation. We were almost done before. We were just 30, 40, maybe a minute off. Hey, our metrics are clean. That's great. Okay. Compilation is done. We have our build. What we're going to do is we're going to modify. This is the idea. We go inside of HTML media element. We find the pause thing here. Pause internal. And here I want to check, like, if we're cloning the element, is cloning element visually, is being used in picture-in-picture mode, basically, then don't do it unless pause internal. Don't do it unless a user input event is on the stack. And I believe we have something called like is handling user input. Yeah, is handling user input. CPP. Something called user activation. DOM user activation is handling user input. Do we have anything like that? Is handling? Oh, we already have it in here. Great. And is not handling user input, then we return. So that's what I want to try. See what happens. Know what? Hold up. Hold up. I need to use build with default here. Otherwise, it was pointed at my artifact build before. This terminal was all artifact buildy, and this one was the binary one. So I had to switch this one to binary time. Binary mode, baby! Okay, so now we rebuild with our new C++. Let's hopefully get that done quickly. I don't want to just sit here and watch this build with you. I mean, not that I don't love hanging out. Oh, I see some more traffic in the chat. Perks of working on a giant C++ code base. That is correct. What do you think Firefox needs to be more appealing than Chrome? I mean, I think there's no silver bullet. There are lots of things that there's like a long tail of things we need to do. Obviously, we need to offer a better experience in general. So what does that mean? Well, it mean different things for different people. Obviously, we need the browser to work on most sites and work properly. You know, that means shimming APIs that are being blocked by like enhanced tracking protection. That means implementing web APIs that important sites have implemented that they're using, despite the fact that we might not have necessarily agreed with the specifications, like finding some kind of compromise there or applying pressure to have those sites not use those APIs. So making websites work properly is probably priority one, because that's the primary job of the browser. The other things to do are make sure it works fast and efficiently. So really, performance is table stakes. So keeping that going, and we've done a good job actually in the past couple of years of bringing our performance to a comparable level, at least in our according to our measurements and from my personal measurements and from telemetry. Our performance is quite comparable now. And then offering the users more power if possible. So picture-in-picture is a perfect example of the, offering users an ability that the other browsers don't give you. So I think that would make Firefox more appealing. These are just my opinions, though. I find it much harder to create dynamic web pages than just making a desktop app using GTK or Qt. It feels like HTML, CSS, and JS were originally meant to just specify documents, and the past 20 years were hacks to get them to make apps. In my opinion, probably much better if browsers just had a VM bytecode and you can use whatever language and UI framework you wanted. Java applets failed trying to do this, says Spent Death. I don't think I agree with you. I think it's much easier. So if you take a look at my Joy of Coding webpage, building this webpage was incredibly simple. It's just this. It's HTML. There's plenty of documentation for what I did here. It's nothing fancy, and I was able to build up and embed a bunch of stuff to make it so that you could watch my stream. And I think that would have been a lot harder for me to do and make it so that people could easily run it by creating a binary application using GTK or Qt. I don't think it's not a contest. There's no contest. It's much easier to deploy web applications than GTK. Speaking as someone who deploys desktop applications that run web applications, it's much easier to deploy web applications. The infrastructure is just better for it, and the tooling's better for it. I say there's no contest. It's not even the same sport. It's not even the same ballpark. Okay, so let's run this. Let's see what happens. Okay, so the original bug was about Twitter. So let's find that example again. Having Google-controlled websites advertising it the way they do Chrome would be a nice start to making it more appealing in a fair fight. Well, obviously, I mean, Google has the, a lot of opportunity to evangelize their web browser because of all of the services that they offer, for sure. Okay, so here's our video. We can play it. We can pause it. Let's open it in picture-in-picture. Here we go. Let's play it.
Discussion with her. So
let's mute it and let's scroll it out of view. Okay, so we keep it playing. So that works. And we can still pause it from user input events. Except from here. Shoot. Whenever we try and pause it from the picture-in-picture player window, we are not interpreting that as a user input event. So that is a problem. Now, the way around that maybe is to put a user input event handling user input on the stack with our privileged stuff. So is handling user input, set handling user input is true on whenever we call into the pause method. Pause. And the way you do that is say let handling user input equal, where's our window? Video. Hang on. Where's this dot pause? Here we go. Pause, get weak video pause. Say video dot owner global dot win utils set handling user input true, and then in a try block we'll call pause, and then finally we will destroy the handling user input thing. That's how we make sure we're not keeping it around. And let's see if that works. I think we can just do that to restart. Okay. So let's mute. Oh, that's muted. Pause, play, picture in picture, scroll out, keeps going, pause, play works, pause, play, pause, play. And if I scroll down here, scroll up, can it still pause it whenever I'm down here? Yeah, it does pause it. Note that whenever I come back, it starts playing it again. That's interesting. I didn't notice that before. So like pause. Oh, it removes it from the DOM and it puts it back. Oh, it puts the spinner too. That's interesting. That's not great.
I did.
Play. So we can maybe make this a little bit better, but at some point, Twitter removes it from the DOM, and then we just eliminate it, and then it puts it back. So it's marginally better. Marginally better. So what I can do is I can offer this potential solution to our product team and see what they think. I don't know what that's going to do to the Facebook case. Let me see if I can find... Is there a publicly available Facebook video? Public Facebook video. Facebook videos. Are there Facebook videos here? Yeah, here's one. So if I like open this in picture, who's this? Justin Bieber? Okay, scroll out of view. Still playing. Now, what if I had done that without picture-in-picture? Or if I had done this without the patch. Let me just see how this is supposed to behave first. Or how it currently behaves. So if I pull this out into picture-in-picture and scroll down, it does keep playing. So that's not unique. It pauses it here. If I hit play, this is what our product manager was describing. So what we can do is see whether or not our patch makes it better, that experience. So, okay, Justin Bieber. Seems to make it better. Okay, so a potential solution. We have a potential solution. I'm not saying that we've got this solved yet. We have a potential solution. We don't have a solution for the Twitter case where you scroll it out of view and Twitter removes it from the DOM. But we can offer this as a potential solution. Proof of concept. Bug, and this is for bug such and such. Proof of concept. Don't let videos, don't let sites pause videos when without user input when in pip. Now I already am noticing a problem with this potential idea, which is that now you've got a way for sites to know that you're in pip mode. If they attempt to pause the video and then they look at the playing state of the video and it's not yet paused, then they can make certain claims on whether or not, like they can guess, they can assume, especially if you're using Firefox as a user agent, they might be able to guess that you're using picture-in-picture. So that's a drawback to this plan, is we've added the ability for sites to kind of like, we've added state, basically, so that site, like, kind of, you can infer some state, and that's less good. That's less good. So I don't know whether or not this idea will fly, but we can at least have our my fellow engineers and the product managers think about it a little bit. So you saw it here first. If this solution sticks, you know, maybe you got to watch it being born. And if it doesn't stick, if it turns out that this is not an acceptable solution, well, you got to see a way we could do it. So I don't know if we'd want to try this, but what it does is it prevents site scripts from pausing video elements when they're being used for picture-in-picture, unless the pause is requested when handling user input. In my very limited testing, this addresses both the Twitter and the Facebook case in the bug until, except for the part where Twitter removes the video element from the DOM. The drawback, at least there is at least one potential drawback here. Sites could use this as an ability to detect when users are viewing a video in pip in Firefox, by attempting to pause a video and then checking the play pause state and seeing that the pause attempt failed. I'm not certain if that's really a problem in practice, but calling it out here. Okay, so let's push this up for consideration. I can send our product manager a test build. And they could try it out. Morco Vrotative writes, oh, hang on, there are a couple of questions here. Okay, I'm going to try and answer these last two questions, and then I'm going to end the stream. I think they're questions. They might be statements. We'll see. Mozfab, submit, tip, single, no, what was it? Not, work in progress. So I'm not requesting review on these things. And I can do a try build. Mock try. We'll use chooser, non-artifact. I think that's what I say. No artifact? No artifact. Okay, so the question was, is Firefox on par or ahead of Chrome in terms of hardware acceleration across platforms? I think we're actually ahead. That would be my guess because of WebRender. WebRender gave us the ability to turn on hardware acceleration for our graphics layer on more systems, and gave us more control, more ability to take advantage of the existing hardware. Like, I'm pretty sure Google Chrome and all Chromium browsers are basically using the GPU, not like, unless you're using WebGL. Thank you. I just got a coffee delivery. Unless you're using WebGL, I'm pretty sure the hardware, the graphics hardware, for the most part, for your average website, is being used simply for compositing. That's my guess, based on what I haven't looked at the graphics code of the other browsers recently, but that's how Firefox used to work anyways, is we had layers, and the hardware acceleration was used to composite those layers really, really quickly and efficiently, which doesn't really take advantage of what a graphics card can really, really do. And that's the advantage of WebRender, is instead of just compositing, we are taking the graphics card, and we're trying to use it. We're describing what needs to be drawn to it rather than just giving it textures to composite, which allows it to do what it's good at and very fast at. And that's been aided by the fact that a lot of hardware these days, a lot of computers will have a discrete graphics card. Like, it used to be a graphics card, for you old timers, you probably remember, a graphics card was something you bought and installed in your own machine as an add-on, like as an additional thing. And for the most part, I think your average computer user would just use the integrated graphics device on their motherboard, unless you were doing like some serious gaming. Like I remember I got a Voodoo PCIe graphics card, and that was really expensive and impressive at the time. Like, oh, like look at all the graphics processing it can do. And these days, I think a lot of hardware, when you ship it, it has if it doesn't have a discrete graphics chip, graphics card, it has more powerful integrated graphics, and we can use it to its full advantage, or for its full power, what it's good at with WebRender. And I think that WebRender is a distinct advantage over the other browser engines. I'm quite confident that they don't speak to the graphics cards in the same way, at least unless they're... I'm speaking outside of WebGL, but for general web browser documents, I think they probably just composite layers like we used to do. And the last question was, I always use Firefox. Don't think I found a website which only worked okay on Chrome for quite a while. It was always weird when I found one, though, especially because it's easy to test on both, not like it's a different OS. Okay, that wasn't really a question, but I'm glad to hear that Firefox is serving you and your the sites that you visit work with it. I mean, you have to think about, what we're up against. Think of how many paid software developers Google has working on the Chrome engine and Chromium, and they spend a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of money, building out these things to make it work on various websites. And we are much, much, much smaller, but we are keeping up. And I think that, I'm not trying to toot our own horn here, but I think we're doing a pretty good job of keeping up. We have much more limited resources, fewer people, at least fewer paid people. We have a lot more volunteer contributors, which helps out a lot. And maybe you want to be a volunteer contributor too and help us out more. Okay, so what I want to do is I want to build this for Win64, Mac OS, and Linux. And I just want to do an opt build just so that people can try it out. So pushing. So I'm going to write what I wrote in the commit message. How do I get at it? I have to wait until this commit's done. Or do I? Here, I got it. I just posted a patch that we might want to consider. What it does is prevent site scripts from pausing video elements. In my very limited testing, I've pushed to try to generate some builds for Anya to test. We'd probably want to discuss this with the media folk to see if this is the DOM media folk, see if this is an okay solution regardless. Okay. Oh. Let's see. So whenever these builds are done, try push is here. I'll put links to the generated builds when they're created. All right. I think that's it. Oh, God, whoa, I'm glad you enjoyed the stream. I'm calling it here. Hey, thanks so much for watching episode 272 of The Joy of Coding. I hope you had an interesting time, and I will see you next week with stream 273. Let me know what you thought of today's stream. There's a link inside the agenda. You can rate the episode, smash that rate this episode link, and fill out the forum, and you can let me know what you want to see more of and what you want to see less of, and give me suggestions on what to do. Okay, we went really long. I apologize for that, and I'll talk to you next week. Have a great week, everybody. Take care. Bye-bye.
The joy of coding.
See ya.